Welcome to the Zelos podcast. This week, I actually go back into the archives and pull out an episode of a conversation I had with one of my dearest friends, Vince Minnie, who unfortunately passed away quite young this past September. He and I, very close in the industry for 20, 25 years or so, and each day passes and I miss him more. So I thought you might enjoy the conversation that he and I had all about what it means to be in strength conditioning for a full career. Vince, I can't tell you how excited I am to have you on right now. I got to say to the listening audience, the first time I met this gentleman was, it's got to be almost 15 years, maybe more. You came to Santa Cruz with your wife and kids, and you stayed at this little vacation rental in Pleasure Point, right around the corner from my studio. And you were cruising on by, and you walked in, and I almost walked out the back door. You're such a big guy, you barely made it through the door with your shoulders. And I'm going, oh please, let not this isn't a guy that's an angry husband coming at me right now. And it was just, and from that moment, you just disarmed the whole thing. You're like, this is a cool place. Do you mind? I got a studio up in Sacramento, and then from there, we just created this friendship that has lasted the test of time. And truly, man, one of my best friends in the industry. There's no one tighter. So it's great to have you on. Truly.
Rocky, thank you so much. And I can't share those sentiments even more. But what you've meant in my life, and you and I've talked about it quite a bit, but in life, I kind of try to live by the motto is hang out with people that you want to be like. And that day talking to you will always stick in my mind, because I thought to myself, by God, I'm not a good coach. I'm not very knowledgeable. Sometimes I look back and think to myself, I wasn't a very good person. And I thought to myself, wow, this guy's really got it going on. I was like, this is somebody I want to be like. And our friendship just grew like almost like a water hyacinth, if you will. You ever see that? Like when you go to a pond and there's one little plant, and then you come back a year later and then half the pond is full. And then you come back, 3 years later and the whole pond is full. That's kind of what I feel like our relationship has been like.
Right.
But the part of saying that is I've gleaned so much knowledge from you, just personally, but professionally. That's really helped me form kind of what I do and how I do. So thank you for that.
Well, yeah, it goes both ways, because here you came in thinking, oh, I'm not that good of a coach or this and that. And it's everything that I have in my own head. And I think, honestly, if we can just go into the psych world a second, I think that's what separates the good coaches from the not so good coaches. The not so good coaches think they're the cat's meow and they've got it all. Where the ones that are the good coaches, if I could step outside myself, are the ones that aren't satisfied with what they know. They do not think that they always think they could do better. And so we search for what is it that's going to improve my ability to coach, to train, to be a better person. And I think that's it. I think, I don't want to sound conceited, but I think we both have that we're not satisfied with where we are. So how can we improve ourselves so that we can be a bigger impact on the people that are around us? And that's what I got from you too.
Rock, I read a book one time, and you probably have known it, by Grover, called Relentless. And I think what you're speaking about in the book, he talks about coolers, closers, and cleaners. And exactly what you're speaking about. A cleaner is somebody, you don't have to tell them what to do. They seek out the people, they find out the good, they discard the bad, and then they just go do it. And the key thing that I think you just said is that cleaners, according to him, are people who are never satisfied. We can always be better. There's always more. If you talk about a cleaner who's won a Super Bowl ring or an NBA championship, okay, they don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about the next one. They want to talk about the next ring, right? And we're the same way in the training field. If I go to sleep tonight, I know something's already changed tomorrow. I want to know. I want to see the research, and I want to see a couple of different ones to go, okay, this is something we want to, I either want to validate and put into work, or I want to get rid of. Right. And I think you're right. I think the good ones, we listen. I tell our coaching staff here a lot that, 67% of your job is to listen. 33% of your job is to chat. I said, because you'll always glean more in communication by listening to the questions that haven't been asked. Listen to the questions that haven't been asked. And I don't think enough people do that. I don't think enough relationships do that. I don't think enough businesses do that. I don't think enough coaches do that. And I can go on and on and on. But, for us, I think that's who we are. I think that's what we do. And I think
you've been
that's what
doing
the
it
good
for
ones
how
do.
long now? How long have you been training?
Well, I go back to, training
Well,
or
I mean,
actual business stuff.
Let's talk about the business of training first, because I know, your whole upbringing, it went all the way from early years, but opening up the Minnie's House of Pain.
Well, that is quite the story. So I started training folks back in 1996, I think it was ish. I was living in Folsom, California. And it's a funny story because my wife said to me, she says, I think you need to train people. And I looked around like, oh, babe, hold on. I started laughing. I'm like, California is not ready for me. I said, they're not ready for this unorthodox style of getting into people's lives. And I said to her, babe, we just should put that on the shelf for a little bit. And I said, honestly, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I said, because it's a whole different Vince. And my wife will tell you, there's an East Coast Vince and a West Coast Vince, right? So anyway, I had a young man come up to the door one day, lived in the neighborhood, and he saw me training, and he's like, hey, can I come work out with you? So I opened the door. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, why would I want to train you? I said, man, get off my doorstep. And I closed the door. And my wife looks and she goes, what did you just do? I said, don't worry, he'll be back. Just like that. Don't worry, he'll be back. Day 2, comes back up to the house. Says, Vince, I think we got off to the wrong side. He spoke with a lisp. He went to a high school up here in Northern California. I said, listen, man, I told you yesterday, and I'm going to tell you one more time. You're about as athletic as a pair of black socks. Get off my doorstep. I said, you have no reason to be here talking to me. Shut the door again. My wife says, look, you need to go down and apologize to Chris because, that's his mom. And you can't do this in our neighborhood. I said, babe, he'll be back. Day 3, I invite him into the house. I said, what? And this is what I do with everybody. When I sit down with them, what is it you really want? Tell me what you really want. Well, I want to play varsity football, and I want to be a starting tackle. And I said, are you ready for what I'm about to do to you? I said, I really need you to think about the price you have to pay to play football and do the things I'm going to ask you to do. He said yes. Long story short, Christopher went on his junior year. He started at left inside tackle. His senior year, he was one of the leaders on his team. And that was the end of the story. And actually quite the start, but not quite the start of Minnie's House of Pain. So when I speak about Minnie's House of Pain, it has zero to do with training. I had a young man, I was living in Roseville, and this was before I actually started the gym. I was living in Roseville, and he walked past my house every day at 11 o'clock. And one day he yells to me from the street, Rock, he says, hey, mister, can I work out with you? I said, come here, man. I said, how come you walk by my house every single day at 11 a.m. in the morning? I got nothing better to do. I said, I said, why aren't you in school? I don't go to school. It bores me. I said, oh. I said, and where do you live? So he points west. Well, west in Roseville is the railroad tracks. He says, I live out there. I said, come on, man. I said, those are the railroad tracks. He goes, I know. He goes, I stay in a car every night until they kick me out. I said, where's your mom? I don't know. She left me 5 years ago. I said, where's your dad? And his exact words, I won't say them on the podcast. I'll give you the initials. He says, that SOB is drunk every night. If I go home, he beats on me. He says, so I don't go home. I said, really? I said, and I half-heartedly said this to this kid. I said, you can lift with me if you do three things. Number one, we got to get you reunited with your family. Well, being in law enforcement at the time, I could help him with that. I said, number two, we got to get you clean. I said, and number three, you got to get a high school diploma. I said, if you don't do any of those three things, you're done. He goes, I don't have any money. I said, I didn't ask you for money. I said, you asked me if you want to lift with me. I said, you could, but this is the payment that you'll have to give me. 3 years later, Rocky, this kid's getting ready to go off to junior college. He was 15 and a half, 16 years old. And he comes into my garage. This is in Roseville. And he's got a gray bag. And in the bag, he goes, here, this is for you. I said, what is that? So I pull out this sign. I never knew the kid was an artist. And he says, I made this for you. And it said Vincent Minnie's House of Pain. And it was a taskmaster with a whip. And in the pain part was all in red. And I said to him, I said, hey, why did you make this for me? He said, because you gave me everything, but asked me for nothing. I said, oh, I said, this is cool. I said, why is the pain in red? He said, because at night, he said, coach, he said, I didn't know where my life was going. He said, I didn't know where my family was. I didn't know if I was going to live or I was going to die. He said, you helped to show me the way. He said, and this is all I have to give you. I said, I said, well, it doesn't end there. He goes, what do you mean? I took it, I hung it on my wall in the garage, and I said, if I ever own my own strength and conditioning facility one day, I'll name it after you.
I had no idea. I've never heard this story.
God's honest. Rocky, I still have that sign here in my gym.
That is so wonderful.
And I've had people tell me, other people who I have associated business type things with, you got to change your name. You're going to lose business. You know, this isn't, people don't want to come to a place associated with pain. I said to them, I said, if they're that shallow and they can't come in and find out who I am and who we are and why we are, then they probably don't belong here till they figure themselves out. And that is how it got its name. That is how it evolved. I started in a 3-car garage, and Rocky, you know this, and I had one Airdyne bike. I had one swing treadmill. I had a squat rack that was, I had since I was in 7th grade. It wobbled. I had one leg sled, and I had dumbbells that you had to put together with hex screws. Well, 4 kids in the neighborhood turned into 72 people within 6 months.
Wow.
And all we did is the same exact stuff you're doing, and you're well more in depth and astute at it than I was, is we did performance training, speed, power, strength. Later on in my career, I really found out that, and through you and some others, that really mobility and movement is the key, right, to everything, to unlocking everything. And I don't care if you're 8 years old or if you're 90 years old, movement is the key. So really, when you speak about kind of who we are and what we do, I think one of the biggest things is when I get somebody to come to the gym is I get in their lives, because a lot of people talk about goals and a lot of people talk about, well, I want to lose weight. I want to feel better. I want to look better. That's not what they want. What they want is the lifestyle that goal affords them afterward. That's what they really want. So for me to do that, and I tell my coaches all the time today, is you absolutely have to have a PhD in people's lives. You're not in the fitness industry. You're in the relationship industry.
Well, so the remarkable thing that strikes me right now is that what you just said was that we're in the industry of providing freedom, of freedom from self-created bondage in a way, like people painting themselves in the corner and wishing that they could look beyond and get to these places where I just want to play with my grandchildren pain free, or I want to get back into skiing, or I just want to be able to uh, be strong enough to do anything I want, right? These are the things that we commonly hear. And so you are providing the keys to this freedom. And the irony here is that while you were beginning this 4 kids in the neighborhood turned into 72, what was your other occupation?
Okay, you had to go there.
I had to.
Well, you said it before. I had a great opportunity to play professional sports. Coming through high school, I played 3 sports. I played football, I wrestled, played baseball, and I did well in all 3. I had the opportunity to choose from all 3, and I chose to play major college football. So I went to Temple University.
Go Owls.
I played, Go Owls. I played there. And there's a whole story there about perseverance, if you will. Maybe we'll get into that in a little bit. But I played 4 years there. And then when I finished my senior year, I was Coach Harden's last captain. And the only captain, still playing defensive line. Then I had an opportunity to go on and play in Philadelphia for Dick Vermeil, Marion Campbell, and then I played for Jim Mora, senior in the USFL for the Philadelphia Stars. People ask me all the time, and this is part of being in your own truth. Well, did you get out of football because you got hurt? No, because everybody that plays football gets hurt. That's just the way it goes. I got out of football because I was good enough to be there. I just wasn't good enough to stay there. And I knew there was more for me to do in life. So I graduated Temple, and I actually had an opportunity to go to their law school. But I went on and played ball. I really didn't have a want to go back to law school after I finished football, but I wanted to put my degree to use, which was criminal justice. And I think today it's called something like criminal administration or something like that. But back east where I lived, they were only hiring, and the pay was like $18,000 a year. And I was like, man, I'm not taking a bullet for $18,000 a year. And then out here, I had gathered information. CHP was hiring, Department of Corrections was hiring, and a special investigator. I came out, I tested for all 3, scored very high on all 3, and chose the Department of Corrections because at the time, 1983, the department was booming. I mean, when I started, there were 12 prisons. Today, I think there's 33 or 34. So kind of tell you the growth. And I knew I was never going to want to stay an officer. So I entered the Department of Corrections. I started as an officer, promoted to sergeant, promoted to lieutenant, promoted to counseling, because there were 3 parts of the pie: counseling, custody, and business. And then I went from there to a captain, where I ran the largest housing unit this side west of the Mississippi at Folsom State Prison, 1,266 inmates, 5 tiers high on 4 sides. And then I promoted and retired as an associate warden out of CSP Sacramento, which is a sister prison of Folsom Prison at the time. But at the same time, training was my passion. I knew that. I couldn't get away from it. And so I ran the facility. Well, kind of got run out of the neighborhood, 4 people to 72. My neighbors were like, Vince, we love you, but we can't be doing this here. And the reason I did that is because I was spending so much time away from my kids and my family. And that cost me at one time. It cost me. And so when I had the opportunity, I was like, I'm not doing that again. So we found a new home in El Dorado Hills, where we're at now. And at the time, The house upstairs was 3,000 square feet, and underneath was a separate shell, if you will, that was an additional almost 3,000 square feet. And so I turned that into a quasi human performance studio. Basically, you have seen that.
Yeah.
And so I ran there, and I promised my wife once I retired from the department that because I was backed up to a school, so I could only run it. This is why I get up so early in the morning. I get up at 2:55. and
Every year it gets earlier.
And I'm at work here. I open the gym at between 3:18 and 3:30, and my first group in is at 4 a.m. And so, but that's how it started, because there was a school behind my house and I couldn't operate during school hours. So I went from 3:30 in the morning to 7:30, shut down, went to work, came home, ran the gym from 3:30 in the afternoon till 7:30 at night. And was able to contract with the school. I was able to have our guys give back to the community. We would do community projects. We'd put bark, we'd buy bark, we'd paint gutters. We did whatever we needed in the community because I believe that people should always give back. And so that's what we did, is we created a little system. And so between the Department of Corrections and the gym, that was my lifestyle.
That's it. That's the juxtaposition or the coincidence, irony, however you'd say it, is helping people, providing them with the keys to their freedom, and then hopefully you're doing it on both ends. But that's remarkable. And you mentioned perseverance earlier, and I would love to talk about that, because that's part of the book that you've written, right? I want to definitely bring the book into the conversation now, because it has a lot to do with what we've just been speaking about. So give me a little insight, let the listening audience know title of the book, and what brought you to the point of writing it, first of all.
Well, thank you. The title of the book is called The Power of Discomfort. And the reason I wrote the book is my purpose, I think. And when I talk to people about purpose and I ask them to define their purpose, I don't think they really know what that means. And that means is, to me, is what is the message that you want your family to know about you? What is the message you want your friends to know about you? What is the message you want your coworkers to know about you? What is the message essentially you want the world to know who you are? And when you have that defined, there's certain things I think you need to do every day. And that's why I said before, I don't think I was, 12 years ago, 15, I don't think I was a good coach. And I've certainly, and Rock, you and I've talked about this personally, I've made enough mistakes in my lifetime. I don't think people would ever want to be a friend of mine for. So I, part of what you said before, freedom, it's outlined in our Constitution, Rock. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So life, I think people need to look at it as your health. How do you take care of yourself, which allows you to live the life you want to live? Freedom is more along the lines of your expenses, your finances, how have you set yourself up, and what have you done to create some freedom in your life surrounding that? And pursuit of happiness, well, that speaks for itself. And it can change on a daily basis depending on what your mindset is, right? You have a growth mindset or you have a fixed mindset. So when I got to thinking about this book, I wanted to incorporate a lot of this stuff. But the main premise was, I've lived a lot of years, Rock. I don't mind saying, I mean, I'm 60 years old. And I thought, this is the time now. What do you do when you have life, your health? What do you do when you have freedom? What do you do when you have happiness? You give it back. You pay it forward. And so writing this book was a way for me to help people who have anchors in their life. You know what I mean by anchors? There's a great fishing story. And I put this in the book, but I'll share some of it. There's a great fishing story. And you know, when I come down to Santa Cruz, I love to fish.
Mhm.
But this is a little fable, right? So here's a man. He's got this boat and he makes his living by fishing. And he realized he had lost his anchor. So he bought a new anchor and got ready to toss it over, except he made a fatal mistake. When he tossed it over, it wasn't anchored to the boat. So he jumped in to the water and he's grabbing this anchor and he's holding it. This anchor's taking him down. Well, he had two choices. He could hold the anchor and perish, or he could let go of the anchor, get to the top, hopefully go get a new anchor and fish another day for his family. So in life, people have anchors and you have two choices. You can hold this anchor and you can let it drag you down your whole life until you perish, or you can let go of it and you can find a new way. Well, there were anchors I needed to let go of. And so I thought, what a way to teach people besides in the fitness world. Because let's face it, when people come into a gym, they fear. They fear, Rocky. And they fear a lot of things. They fear being judged. They fear not being able to perform. They fear getting hurt. Okay. And in the book, again, I speak about fear. And to me, fear is one of two things: false evidence appearing real, or F everything and run. That's what people do. So I thought, what better way for me to give back and teach people how to combat some of this? Now, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist, but I am a person who grew up in a very, very tough neighborhood, in a very, very tough family. In the book, I describe it as I come from an Italian family with influence where my road could have gone either way. And you have to learn lessons of perseverance. And that's why I mentioned in the beginning, you have to find people who you want to be like in order to succeed. But I believe that your life is made up and you are who you are today by the decisions that you've made on a daily basis, whether it's to lose weight, whether it's to get in better shape. Oh, did I hit that snooze alarm? I should have been at the gym this morning. If I told somebody today, if you eat that cheeseburger, you're going to have a major heart attack tomorrow, or you're going to eat that cheeseburger, right? So your life, you are who you are based upon the decisions you make on a daily basis. And that was the premise of this book. So my wife knows this. When I pass away, when my eyes close someday, I don't want a headstone with a name on it. I don't want a date of birth. I don't want a date of decease. All I wanted to say is he made a difference. I think there's a lot of time in my life I wasn't that guy. You know, you grow up, you're playing high school sports, you're doing really well, you're trying to stay humble, you get into college, you're still doing this, you get into the pros, and then there's this little bit of narcissism, right? There's this little bit about entitlement. There's this little bit about selfishness. All the things I never really thought I was in my life. Come to find out, I was completely all those things. And all I did was put on a really nice front, not to be those things. And I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people don't look in that mirror and see their truth, see the things they have to change, and not know the steps of how to go do that. That was the purpose of the power of discomfort. Because in order to change, you have to live on the growth edge. And living on the growth edge in life means you have to be uncomfortable. You cannot ever grow until you've crossed that line from comfort to uncomfort.
Well
Right.
said.
And we talk about it all the time, Rob.
Yeah.
And so we can't make progress in our lives. And that's really what people come to gyms for. They come to community. They come for change. There's a lot of times they just don't know what their change is. And if you can give them stuff to get that ahead of time, if you can give them little pearls of wisdom ahead of time, that's what it's all about. That's truly what it's all about. And that's what that book is all about.
Yeah, you're right. You remind me of this story, kind of a parable, like the anchor. As there is a guy walking along, not paying attention to where he's going, and suddenly he falls into a hole, and it's a very deep hole. And he eventually hits the bottom, and there's very little light shining down. It's very dark, and he tries to scratch and claw his way up to the top, but every time he did, he fell back to the bottom. And but it wasn't too long before he heard somebody walking along at the top of the hole there, and he yelled out for help, and it was a doctor. And the doctor looked down and saw the guy way down there. He wrote a prescription and threw the prescription down the hole and kept on walking. And that didn't do much. And then not too long after that, a priest was walking by, heard the calls for help, looked down and said a prayer, and then kept on walking. And then this complete stranger was walking by, and the guy yelled for help. And without even thinking, the stranger just jumped and went down right and landed right beside him in that deep hole. And he said, "What the heck did you do that for?" And the stranger said, "Well, you see, I've been down here before and I know the way out." And I think, that's you. You've been through trials and tribulations, and you've climbed out, you let go of the anchor, so to speak, and now you're teaching others how to get out of that hole. And I don't think there's nothing more commendable. There's nothing more noble in our lives than to be of service to others. And if we do that in the form of a coach or a friend or a parent, I mean, we do it in all the roles of our life, then yeah, we've lived a good life. And that's what I see happening. So how do you continue this on? How do you continue, like, your facility and outside of the facility? You mentioned community service, which is I think it's a valuable part of any business, to do something for the community in which you live. But what other kind of pearls of wisdom, if you don't mind? Like, what would you share? And not to take everything out of the book, but what are some other things that come to mind?
Well, I don't think people today understand their value. Value to me is huge. And I learned a good little trick from a gentleman, and I kind of took my spoof off of it. Jeremy Anderson. I was listening to him one day, and he talked about somebody's value. So a lot of times in the gym here in life, we'll come across people who you just know are in that hole, Rocky. They're in that hole. Now, the first thing you have to think to yourself is, and I see it a lot of times with homeless people, people don't want to talk to them. They don't want to go up to them, right? You have to recognize those people, and we see them in our trades. So I'll bring them into my office, and one of the things I'll do is I'll sit them down. And this is the God's honest truth. I had a young lady one day, and I opened up my wallet, and I had $100 bill in the wallet. And I took out this bill, and I asked her, I said, and her mom was sitting with her, and I said, "How much is that?" And she says, "It's $100. I said, "Oh." And I took it, I crinkled it up, I unraveled it. I said, "How much is that? How much is it worth?" I just crinkled it. She says, she's laughing. She says, "It's still $100. I said, "Yeah, good answer." I took it, crinkled it up again. I stepped on it, spit on it, threw it in the trash, took it out, cleaned it all off, held it up. I said, "How much is that bill worth?" She says, "It's still $100. I said, "Good." I said, you passed the test." I said, "Now I'm going to give you that bill. That's your $100. I said, "But there's one caveat to that bill. You can't spend it." And she says to me, "What do you mean?" I said, "Somewhere in your life, you have been kicked. You have been pushed aside. You have been stepped on. You have been cast away." I said, "You don't understand your value. You have value." I said, "So every time now you take that bill, you could put it in your wallet. You could put it up on your mirror. You could put it in your makeup drawer. I don't care where you put it. But every single time you're feeling down on yourself, every single time something happens in your life where you play the victim and not the victor, you better look at that bill and understand your value." And with that, I keep Rocky. I keep a box of tissues in this office because by God, I know when I bring somebody in here, they're going to be in tears. And they're going to be in tears because I've touched a nerve. I've touched exactly what it is that they want change to live the lifestyle they want to live. They just didn't know it when they walked in that office because many haven't touched that nerve. Many haven't seen that in them. So I think one of the first things is find out what it is that you really, really want. Number two, know your value. Number three, bet on yourself. Don't bet on anybody else. My dad taught me a lesson when I was very young. As I said, I grew up in a Italian family with influence in Brooklyn, New York. And by God, I think I was probably 11 or 12. And he sat me down, grabbed me right by the chin. He said, you listen to me and you listen to me good. He said, don't you ever forget what I'm getting ready to tell you. Now understand, my dad died when he was 64 years old. He said, number one, trust none of what somebody tells you. Number two, trust only half of their actions. Number three, trust all of their patterns. And if we just watch and if we just listen, we can find so much out about the people that we work with, and we can help the people who want to be helped, and even the ones who don't want to. If you spend enough time around people you want to be like, trust me, they will in fact want to work with you. Because what is it that people really want? They want three things. Number one, they want to be appreciated. Number two, they want to feel important to something or someone. And number three, they want results. I don't care if it's your marriage. I don't care if it's your church. I don't care if it's your friendships. I don't care if it's your business. I don't care what it is. You give those people that you're dealing with those three things, majority of them you're going to keep. See, because there's 5%ers and there's 95%ers. The 95%ers are the naysayers. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, can't do that. Oh, the sun is cloudy. Oh, you know, those are the people who don't know they want change yet. Those are the ones who look in the mirror and they just see rainbows and cotton candy and, okay. I've never met, and I don't believe in the word perfect. I believe in the word efficient, but I don't believe in the word perfect. So to me, and Thomas Watson, I don't know if people know who that is, one of the co-founders, presidents of IBM, said, if you want to be successful, double your rate of failure. Double your rate of failure. And for me, and you said it earlier on, Rock, I think we are where we're at today is because people probably told us somewhere along the line you couldn't, you wouldn't, you shouldn't. You know, we are that, and you and I talked about this during our pandemic, is we see ourselves as the lighthouse, not the boat out in the storm. And the way you have to do that is you have to show up. You got to show up every day. And my wife will tell you this, when my alarm goes off in the morning, there's not one morning I ever hit the snooze and lay back down in bed. That alarm goes off, my feet hit the floor, I get a little stretching, boom, I wash, I go down the hallway, I have my coffee, say my prayer, take my vitamins, I'm out the door. Done. Okay. Every single day. You show up. You have to show up consistently. You have to show up consistently. You have to show up with a positive attitude. There was a study back in the 90s by a gentleman by the name of Lasada, and he studied 60 businesses. And of those 60 businesses, he had cameras in the rooms and all, and he listened to every single word that was said. Who was saying positive things? Who was saying negative things? Who was seeing the glass half full instead of half empty, which we could have a whole conversation about that one too. But right. The bottom line is he listened, and the companies that were the most successful were the ones with that positive outlook. But I think one of the biggest keys that I could give without giving everything away is the word completeness. Completeness. Think about for 1 minute in your life, my life, anybody's life, what book didn't you finish? What bill hasn't been paid yet? Who do you need to say you're sorry to? Who do you need to say I love you to? That's completeness. Because if you don't complete, you will always live and stay in your past.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get out of your past if you don't complete.
No.
And so, which means you can't move into your future, because that too will be incomplete. So I think those are just some little things out of the book that I would say it's probably worth. And like any book, it's not for everybody. But if one person can find one thing, and it's the type of book you don't have to read cover to cover, you can go, I'm going to read about chapters on fear. Boom. I'm going to read about chapters on scar. And at the end, I give like 3 little things for you to do that can kind of help you, that help me. Like I said, there's some influential people in my life, and I speak about that in the book. And I'm not afraid to credit all those people with where I am today, because I don't, and I've got a ways to go. I've got a ways to go. I think people have to, on a daily basis, what's the one act of kindness that you did today? Where did you invest in your finances today? Where did you invest in your personal growth today? Where did you invest in your learning? See, doing the little things, and you don't have to spend a whole day on it. Just do one little thing. They're easy to do, Rocky. But guess what? They're also easy not to do. Here's one for the listeners. We're in this world of remote working. We're in sales. We're in this, right? Did you make the 3 phone calls you said you were going to make? Because guess what? You're your own entrepreneur. You get up, your own time clock, your own lunch hour, your own this, your own that. Occasionally have to be on a meeting. But you're your own entrepreneur, and nobody knows what you're doing. Ready for this? Except you. And that is character. That is integrity. It's what you're doing when nobody else is watching. And by God, I've been there, Rocky. I've been there, and I'm going to tell you right now, I did not like who that guy was. And I'm not afraid to say that.
Vince, oh my gosh. I mean, as you can tell, we can probably go on. I can go on listening to all this too. And the most remarkable thing for me right now in this moment is that most of the podcasts we do on this podcast is about the specificity of training and proper loading and assessments and velocity-based training and wearable technology and a whole bunch of other stuff. We haven't touched upon any of the elements of training, but the most amazing thing is this is probably one of the most powerful conversations that anybody can listen to, because this goes deeper than the level of performance. This goes to the whys. This gets to the heart of so many matters. So, and we can apply these same principles into a training facility, into a training program. Getting people to get outside of their comfort zone is where real change occurs. Disrupting patterns, holding on to the things that work, and letting go of what doesn't serve a purpose anymore. I mean, you're not going to find a lot of that on a workout sheet, but it's got to be there in between the lines. And I'm glad you brought all this up. I can't believe we've gone through an entire episode here, and of course, we're going to have to do a follow-up somewhere down the road so we can delve even deeper. But this has been phenomenal. if people want to and find out, where can they get the book? Where can they go?
Really simple, Rock. The book is on Amazon. It's very simple. Just Google in The Power of Discomfort, Vince Minnie. It's $19.95. I always said in the beginning here too, books don't make money, but they help build people. They help develop people. And that's my only purpose for really having people go to Amazon and get this book. And also give me some feedback. So if you want to know how to contact me, if you have any questions that I can answer, you can either go through the website, which is mhop.fit, mhop.fit. You can also go to my email, which is Mini, M-I-N-I-V, Mini, M-I-N-I, Quattro, Q-U-A-T-R-O, @gmail.com. That's Mini V Mini Quattro @gmail.com. And I'll answer anything that I can for you guys, for the listeners. If you're ever in El Dorado Hills, we're at 4990 Hillsdale Circle. I promise when you come in, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I will answer any questions. You'll get a delightful smile, unless I'm not having a good training session, then that could be a problem. No, I would love to hear from you, good or bad on the book. Like I said, guys, what you're getting ready to read, hopefully, is you're reading about my life. So vulnerability is a big thing. And I think as men, we don't sometimes show our vulnerability, and I think we have to. That's also part of being uncomfortable and growing. So please share with me anything you'd like to. You can reach me on Facebook. You can reach me on Instagram, and it's Vince Minnie or Minnie's House of Pain. And I would love to speak with anybody who's out there and answer whatever questions. If you'd like me to come speak to you or a group, I'm available to do that as well.
Vince, thank you so much.
Rocky, you're awesome. You know I love you from all my heart. And like I said, one of my inspirations is in life is picking people who I wanted to be like, and you were one of them. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
And right back at you. Well, that brings this episode to a close. My hearts go out to everyone and anyone whose Vince's path had a connection with, anyone he touched, and of course, family, friends, colleagues. I know there's a hole in our lives that's missing right now, but the fact that he was in it made my heart fill even more. So, until next time, go out there, make it a good one, and give a hug to somebody you care about.